All right, thank you everybody for tuning in to the updates of the Stormwater Management Plan for 2022. We've made a few changes to our Stormwater Management Plan document, and we just wanted to make sure that everybody is aware of those. Next slide. So before we start talking, let's go over some terminology. The first piece of terminology that we're going to want to cover is MCM. MCM stands for Minimum Control Measure, and those are the goals required of the City of Moberly by the DNR. We have a permit to have a separate storm sewer from the DNR, and in order to maintain that permit, we need to reach these MCMs or goals. Next slide. So there's 6 MCMs. The first one is public education and involvement in stormwater issues. The second one is public involvement in the permit renewal process. Then we have illicit discharge detection and elimination, construction stormwater runoff control, and post-construction stormwater management, and then finally municipal good housekeeping. And I'm going to go over each of those in more detail here in a minute. Next slide. The next piece of terminology we're going to cover is BMP. BMP stands for Best Management Practices, and they're basically the steps that we take to achieve the goal that is the MCM. A BMP can be a physical object, like a screen over a storm drain to keep trash out, or it can be a practice, like providing training or brochures or newspaper articles. Anything that helps us achieve the goals that is the MCM would be a BMP. Each BMP has to have a way of evaluating whether it's effective or not, and that's something that we're required to report to the DNR every year. Next slide. So this presentation is only going to cover changes to the previous Stormwater Management Plan, which was active from 2018 through 2021. If you want to see the entire permit, that is available on the city website in the Stormwater section. So the first batch of changes are going to be in Section 2, which covers MCM 1, public education. First of all, we added non-homeowning residents as a target audience for education. Previously, we only had homeowners as residents, but a lot of people don't own homes. They may rent or they may live with family members, and they're just as capable of contributing to pollution or of helping the city fight pollution. So we are going to reach out to those people as well to make sure that they understand stormwater issues and what they can do to help. We also got rid of solid waste managers as a target audience because the city no longer manages solid waste in-house. We added nutrient pollution and construction pollutants as pollutants that we are going to educate people about. People need to know about these types of pollution, so our educational outreach is going to include those. We got rid of the rain barrel program. We're no longer going to be installing signs on every outfall around town. And the article calendar. We also got rid of brochure distribution as a BMP. We are still going to be distributing brochures, but as I previously mentioned, each BMP has to be able to be evaluated for effectiveness, and it's hard to measure how effective a brochure is. You give somebody a brochure, they may read it, they may not, they may agree with it, they may not. So we're going to continue to hand out brochures. Those are no longer going to be a method that we use to achieve our goal or MCM of public education. Also, previously, the city partnered with the master gardeners to work on combating stormwater pollution, and that partnership went so well we decided to expand it out to other environmental organizations around town. We are going to continue to work with the master gardeners, but we're going to be working with some other groups as well to coordinate trash cleanups and stream rehabilitation and stuff like that. We also added some new BMPs. We added social media posts, city-sponsored trash cleanups, and article publication both in the newspaper and on the city website as potential outreach mechanisms. We also created some forums on the city website where people can submit questions or concerns about stormwater issues. And the city is going to offer erosion and sediment control training to contractors who build in the city at least once per permit cycle. So at least once sometime before 2026, we're going to offer that training. The second batch of changes are in Section 3 of the permit in MCM 2, public involvement in the permit process. Now we clarified our language. The minimum control measure only covers public involvement in permit renewal. Other forms of public involvement are covered under MCM 1. We changed our stormwater committee meeting schedule to once per permit cycle. Previously, it was scheduled to meet once per year, but that really didn't make a lot of sense because if nothing is changing in the stormwater management plan, there's not a whole lot for the committee to do. So now the committee will just meet whenever we change something about the stormwater management plan. We also established a requirement for annual stormwater updates to the City Council, and as previously mentioned, the city website now has stormwater complaint and comment forms. People can also use those to complain about or comment on or provide suggestions for the stormwater management plan. Section 3, MCM 3, illicit discharge detection and elimination. Now before we go into this one, we need to provide some background information on what an illicit discharge is. An illicit discharge is defined as any time anything other than stormwater enters the storm sewer system or a stream without a permit. If water fell from the sky, it can go into a stream, that's fine, no problem. If it came from a tap, it should be going in the sewer in general. Now, some businesses and city departments have a special permit from the DNR where they can discharge treated water to storm drains or streams. But otherwise, the city has ordinances that prohibit illicit discharge. So anytime water that didn't fall out of the sky is going into a stream and there's not a specific permit for it, that would be an illicit discharge, and that is prohibited by our municipal ordinances. So our changes to this section are, previously, the city had 19 priority outfalls that were determined by an engineering company as being representative of the city as a whole, and we would inspect each of those representative outfalls once per quarter. Now instead, the city is going to be inspecting each and every single outfall, and we're going to try and get at least 60% of those in this permit cycle, which ends in 2026. We also added a storm sewer mapping project, the household hazardous waste recycling program, targeted presentations to specific audiences that we are concerned may be contributing to pollution. We have those stormwater complaint forms that we previously mentioned. We're going to be doing public education and city staff training to try and prevent illicit discharges. And we're going to be training multiple members of city staff to tell if there's an illicit discharge going on and what they need to do about it. All of those are now newly added to the program to help us reach our minimum control measure goal. We got rid of the educational conferences as a BNP. Previously, the city was planning on offering a conference that would address many different types of audiences about stormwater issues. Now we're going to instead try and have targeted presentations that are specifically focused on target groups, and instead of having a general audience sort of thing. And we also added an explanation to the permit of how our priority water areas that we are especially careful to check for illicit discharges, how those are chosen. And here's the criteria for how they're chosen. First of all, areas with evidence of ongoing or past history of illicit discharges are a priority area. Areas with land use that would influence the storm sewer, or if they're very close to potential pollutant sources. If they have higher population density, neighborhoods with on-site sewer systems, that would be septic tanks. Neighborhoods with septic tanks inside the city limits are a priority area. Areas with no litter or dumping issues, areas with large or increased number of citizen complaints that would be submitted through the stormwater forms that we mentioned, or industrial areas are all priority areas for illicit discharge detection and elimination. So that's that for section 4. Next section is section 5 that covers minimum control measure 4, construction runoff control. And again, we're going to do some background information before we go into this. Requirements in minimum control measure 4 apply specifically to sites with a land disturbance permit. Not every construction site has a land disturbance permit. The only ones that require a land disturbance permit are projects that disturb an acre or more of ground, projects that are part of a common area of development that will eventually disturb an acre or more, any project that's associated with the installation of 1,000 or more linear feet of utilities, land disturbance within 100 feet of drainage way, fill or excavation of 50 or more cubic yards of material, or projects otherwise at high risk of causing sediment or erosion or runoff. Those sites require a land disturbance permit. And then here are the changes to the land disturbance permit regulations. First of all, we described with more detail the prioritization mechanism for construction inspections. Sites with land disturbance permits take top priority. The city inspects those first. Sites without land disturbance permits are a lower priority. We also added a time limit for responses to public complaints. The city is going to need to respond to any public complaints within 5 business days. We added those stormwater complaint forms that we mentioned, so if people have an issue with a construction site in their neighborhood that's causing pollution or erosion or runoff, they can mention that to the city now. And this one is important. We also changed the requirements in the land disturbance manual, so contractors are now required to self-inspect their sites at least once every 14 days and within 72 hours of a rainfall of 2.9 inches or more. This is a requirement that the state imposed upon us. It's not something that we are just dying to make things harder for contractors. This is something that the state is requiring all municipalities in Missouri to require. So anybody who is working on the land disturbance permit is now going to need to do those self-inspections, and the city is more than happy to help explain what that means and give you forms that you can use for those if you want to use our forms. But that's just something to be aware of. And that's all the changes for minimum control measure 4. The next section is section 6, minimum control measure 5. This is going to be post-construction stormwater management. This is going to be for sites that continue to have a high risk of runoff or erosion or pollution after construction is done. They would fall under this category. The only sites that would require a post-construction stormwater permit would be ones that develop an acre or more of land, projects that are part of a common area of development that disturb an acre or more over the lifetime of the project, or projects at high risk of sediment or erosion. And this can mean either installing some sort of post-construction stormwater controls, like a rain garden or a detention basin, or it can mean contributing to the regional stormwater fund. And the city uses the money from that regional stormwater fund to build city-maintained regional stormwater basins to try and reduce flooding and erosion across town. It will depend on the specific area being developed which response is the most appropriate, but either of those are potential options for construction projects that would require a post-construction plan. The changes we made to this section are, we clarified how the permit system for permanent stormwater facilities works, and I'll go into that on the next slide. We added the storm sewer mapping project, the demonstration rain gardens that are around City Hall, stormwater complaint forms on the city website, and presentations to target audiences as BMPs. We are going to be now using those methods to help people achieve compliance with the permanent stormwater facility requirements. In addition, municipal inspectors who inspect post-construction facilities are now going to need annual training on post-construction stormwater controls. For now, that's just me, but if anybody else who works for the city starts doing inspections of permanent stormwater facilities, they will also need that annual training to make sure that they're up to date on all the latest developments in the field and know what they are looking at. So here is the post-construction permanent stormwater facilities inspection and permit system. So anybody who has permanent stormwater facilities has to maintain a stormwater permit. That permit will renew for free year to year if the facility is functioning as intended. However, if that facility isn't functioning as intended, if it is broken, if it is clogged, if it is contributing to pollution or erosion downstream, then that permit will not be renewed. And after the person who owns that stormwater facility has repaired it, they will need to apply for a new stormwater permit, and that will cost $250. From now until April 22, the city is happy to offer a complimentary, non-legally binding review of permanent facilities. So if you own a permanent stormwater facility and you want to know what that inspection will be like and what we'll be looking for, you can contact the city, and I have my contact information later in the presentation, and I can come out and look at your facility and let you know what we would be looking for in a stormwater inspection. Starting in April 22, I am going to be doing actual inspections to see if the permit renews or not, so I will no longer be able to offer reviews after that point. The next section is section number 7, minimum control measure 6, municipal good housekeeping. These are accountability measures that the city has to make sure that the city is not contributing to pollution or erosion. All the BMPs in this section are for city personnel only. This is only for city personnel. Anybody who is not an employee of the city will not be affected by anything in this section. This is just an accountability measure to make sure that we're not doing the same thing we're trying to stop other people from doing. And the changes in this section are all city departments are going to be required to create stormwater control standard operating plans, or SOPs, by June of 2022. That means that every city department is going to have a written document that explains what they do to make sure that their normal functioning isn't causing pollution or erosion. We also added a requirement for snow removal training for city employees who move snow as part of their job. They are now going to have specialized training in that starting fall of 2022. We described the city flood management project assessment method, which is that the city reviews building projects and may consult with an engineering firm for areas deemed a flood risk. We added a requirement to get feedback from department heads about BMPs. So if we are adding BMPs or changing BMPs that could affect a city department, we're going to talk to that department head to make sure that our changes to those BMPs won't affect their ability to do their job or function normally, and that those BMPs will actually make it likely that it will decrease pollution or erosion or other forms of stormwater problems. We also removed the sewer rehabilitation BMP. If sewers need rehabilitating, the city will continue to rehabilitate those, but we don't want to just rehabilitate sewers just for the sake of it. So that's not going to be a BMP, that's just going to be something that the city will do on an as-needed basis. Finally, the last section is going to be record keeping and reporting. This is how the city will maintain records and report about the effectiveness of the stormwater program. The city will start to maintain records in spreadsheets. Previously, several records were listed in the stormwater management plan as being maintained in logbooks, but spreadsheets and other forms of online records are much easier to search if we need to get data about a specific situation. They're much easier to store, they don't take up as much space, so we are going to be moving to electronic records rather than logbooks or paper records. Also, previously, the city reported once every other year to the DNR. Now the city will be reporting annually, and each of those annual reports will include an assessment of how well each BMP is functioning to fulfill the minimum control measure or minimum control measures associated with it. You may have noticed some of the BMPs fulfill multiple MCMs, like the stormwater complaint forms on the city website help nearly every single MCM that we have. So it would be assessed how well it fulfills each of those. That is all for now. Thank you very much for your time and interest in the stormwater program. If you have any questions or comments, feel free to reach out to me. My email address is rachelh, that's RACHELH @cityofmoberly.com. My phone number is 660-353-9745.